There's a guy with 400,000 followers posting from a penthouse balcony. He's talking about cash flow, freedom, building something real. The comments are full of people asking what course he's selling. Nobody asks how he's paying for the balcony. That question is more interesting than anything he said in the video, because in a lot of cases, the penthouse isn't the result of the business. The penthouse is the business. And once you understand that mechanism, you start seeing it everywhere. There's a whole ecosystem built around looking wealthy before becoming wealthy. It's not new. People have always borrowed against tomorrow to look good today. But social media turned that into a scalable income model. And a surprisingly large number of people are funding it unknowingly. The basic structure is not complicated once you map it out. You build an image of success, usually around money, freedom, and lifestyle. You use that image to sell courses, coaching, or some kind of program. The program teaches other people how to build the same image. So the product is the appearance of wealth, and the customer is the proof. It sounds circular because it is circular. The income comes from selling the idea of income, not from having it first. Now, some people genuinely built something real before they started posting. That exists, that's worth acknowledging. But a significant portion of what looks like financial success online is constructed. And the construction follows a pretty consistent playbook. First, rent the lifestyle, don't own it. A rented Lamborghini for a weekend photo shoot runs a few $100s. A stay at a high-end hotel for a single shoot is far cheaper than it looks. Footage of a private jet terminal is sometimes just a publicly accessible lounge. None of this is illegal. That's what makes it effective. It reads as evidence of a life that doesn't necessarily exist. Second, frame every purchase as a business expense or a quote, bet point move. The watch isn't consumption, it's branding. The wardrobe is a professional investment. This framing does two things. It makes the spending feel rational instead of status-driven. And it signals to the audience that rich people just think differently, which is technically true, but not in the way being implied. Third, always show outcomes, never show timeline or cost. You see the result. You don't see the months of losses, the failed launches, the debt. You don't see the credit utilization rate on the card that paid for the hotel room. One of the more overlooked mechanics here is how debt gets used aesthetically. Not financially strategically, aesthetically. The look of wealth can be financed the same way anything else can be financed. And a monthly payment on a leased car looks identical on camera to an owned one. So you're not watching someone who built wealth. Often you're watching someone leveraged. Leveraged to look like someone who built wealth. That distinction doesn't show up in the thumbnail. And this is where it gets more financially interesting than most people realize. Because the image itself has a cost structure, just like any other business. There's rent on the lifestyle, production cost on the content, ad spend on the audience. Some of these accounts are running at a loss for months before anything converts. They're essentially pre-revenue startups, except the product is a personal brand. And personal brands have a specific kind of burn rate that nobody talks about. Clothing, travel, gear, editing, thumbnails, paid promotions, outbound collabs. Some of that gets recouped, a lot of it doesn't. The ones who make it tend to convert the audience before the cash runs out. The ones who don't quietly disappear and nobody notices because the feed moves on. What you're watching is survivorship bias with a ring light. You see the people still posting, you don't see the ones who burned through savings trying. Now here's the part that most financial commentary gets wrong about this. The mistake isn't that these creators are dishonest. Some are, some aren't. That's not really the point. The more important mistake is what the audience does with the signal. A lot of people watch these accounts and absorb the lifestyle as a benchmark, not consciously. Nobody sits down and decides to compare themselves to a rented penthouse. But the repeated exposure does something to your sense of what normal looks like. After a while, a certain kind of car starts to feel like a baseline, not an aspiration. A certain kind of apartment starts to feel like the minimum acceptable outcome. And that shift in baseline is expensive, quietly, persistently expensive. It doesn't show up as one bad financial decision. It shows up as a general elevation in what you think you need to feel okay. Slightly higher spending floor, slightly lower savings rate, month after month. Researchers have looked at social comparison and consumption behavior for decades. The general finding across a lot of studies is fairly consistent. Needs source verification. Upward social comparison tends to increase spending, often without conscious awareness. You're not copying the person. You're recalibrating what counts as enough. And when the comparison point is algorithmically optimized for aspiration and envy, that recalibration happens faster and more often than it would naturally. The feed isn't showing you an average. It's showing you a curated extreme. And your brain processes repeated exposure the same way, regardless of whether it's real. That's not a weakness, that's just how human reference points work. But it means the financial cost of consuming this content is real, even if you never buy the course. Even if you scroll past every ad, the benchmark effect is still running in the background. This is the part that rarely gets mentioned when people talk about influencer culture. The more obvious critique is, don't buy from gurus, the course is probably worthless. That's mostly true, by the way. Generic financial courses rarely justify their price tags. But the subtler and possibly larger cost isn't the course. It's the slow distortion of what you consider normal for yourself. The guy on the balcony isn't really competing for your wallet in the obvious sense. He's competing for your reference point, and reference points are harder to audit than purchases. You can check your credit card statement. You can't easily check your baseline expectations. So you end up spending more in general, feeling slightly behind in general, chasing a lifestyle defined by someone who may be financing it with your attention. That last sentence is worth sitting with for a moment. The attention is the asset. The lifestyle is the collateral used to attract the attention. You provide the attention. A platform monetizes it. The creator gets a cut. And sometimes the creator is also in debt to maintain the thing that attracted you in the first place. So what do you actually do with this information? Not in a delete all social media way. That's not a realistic answer for most people. But there are a few practical recalibrations worth making. The first one is about consumption, not spending. Before you can fix the benchmark effect, you have to notice it's happening. That means occasionally asking, where did this standard come from? Not the apartment you have, the apartment you feel like you should have. Not the car you drive, the one that recently started feeling like the minimum. If you can't trace that feeling back to something real in your own life, there's a reasonable chance it came from repeated visual exposure to someone else's constructed image. That's not a moral judgment, it's just useful information about where your financial anxiety is sourced. The second recalibration is about evaluating what you're actually looking at. When someone presents wealth online, there are a few things worth separating. Revenue is not profit. A business doing $500,000 in sales could be losing money. Lifestyle is not net worth. The visible stuff is often the most leveraged stuff. Income from selling financial education is a specific kind of income. It's not the same as income from actually doing the thing being taught. A person can genuinely know something and still be broke. Those aren't mutually exclusive. But the combination of visible wealth and financial education as a product is a specific incentive structure that deserves more skepticism than it usually gets. The third thing is simpler and more personal. Your financial life does not have an aesthetic requirement. The car that gets you to work is doing its job regardless of what it looks like in a photo. The apartment that covers your needs is financially sound, even if it doesn't make content. This sounds obvious. It's less obvious after 18 months of algorithm-curated aspiration, because the feed doesn't show you the person who paid off debt quietly and feels fine. That person isn't posting. There's no thumbnail for financial stability without performance. So the algorithm shows you the performance, and you absorb it as the norm. When in reality, a lot of quietly stable people look completely unremarkable from the outside. They drive used cars. They live in places that wouldn't photograph well. They have savings rates that would bore an audience to tears. And they are, in many cases, in a substantially better financial position than the person on the balcony whose rent is due at the end of the month. The balcony wasn't the destination, it was the product. And like most products, it was designed to make you feel like you needed something. Go back to that guy with the 400,000 followers at the start. He's still up there, same balcony, new caption about mindset and leverage. The comments still full of people asking what he's selling. The right question was always different though. Not what is he selling, but what does he actually own? Those two things are not the same, and the gap between them is where most of the financial damage gets done, quietly, to people watching from below. Next time you feel financially behind, ask yourself one thing. Behind compared to what? And where exactly did that comparison come from?